Yesterday, the Mariners officially decided not to give Teoscar Hernandez the qualifying offer. Was that the right decision? We'll discuss and then scour the AL East for potential trade targets for the Mariners coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnett for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first to listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as their social accounts, is in the description of this episode. So later on in the show, we're going to look at the AL East for potential trade targets for the Mariners, but we're going to start with the biggest piece of news coming out of Seattle yesterday. Teoscar Hernandez did not receive the qualifying offer and will not have the burden of the QO as he enters free agency for the first time in his career. Colby, your thoughts?
Yeah, ultimately the right decision. This is something that we've gone back and forth on, for the last couple months. And with you in particular, your thoughts and feelings have kind of
All over
rapidly
the place.
shifted
All over
based
the
largely
place.
on what Teoscar did the night before.
Right.
So yeah, but ultimately, I think
What
they
have
get
you
this
done for me
right.
lately?
Sure. I mean, literally lately.
Yeah.
Ultimately, though, I think they get this right because I understand a lot of people, um, you know, really wanted that draft pick after pretending like prospects didn't matter at the trade deadline. This is it's a pretty big gamble, especially for a mid-market team. Teoscar was not good. He was not worth $20 million for you last year. There's really no indication that he was going to be worth $20 million for you this year. And it's a big risk to take if he accepts that qualifying offer. And I think a lot of people are out there assuming like, oh, there's no way he would take it. I think the Seattle Mariners, who have talked to Teoscar Hernandez for the last few weeks, who have talked to his reps the last few weeks, I think they probably have a better handle on how, interested a player is on possibly taking that qualifying offer, because Teo is not going to get $20 million a year on the open market. He's probably going to get more than 20 million total. Like he'll probably get a 3-year deal worth, $50 million or something like that. I wouldn't give him that personally, but there's probably a team out there. But this idea that you on Twitter or you in the comments know more than people who are literally talking about this very thing with the player, probably not. So if Teoscar was non-committal about not taking it, if he hinted that he was open to taking it or anything like that, Seattle just didn't want to take that risk because you can do better than Teoscar Hernandez for $20 million.
Right.
I mean, you can. Teoscar's a 105 WRC plus guy who's a bad defender in right field. There's like 150 guys who can give you a 105 WRC plus who are available right now. And most of them are probably better defensively than Teoscar as well. So, and most of them are going to cost less than $20 million. So, this is all about resource allocation. We would like to pretend that Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander have unlimited resources to build this baseball team, and they probably should. That's a John Stanton issue. Right. But they don't. We know they don't. We know they're not going to. So you still have to be wise and smart with your money. And if you thought that there was a chance that Teoscar Hernandez was just going to take $20 million and have the second or third highest AAV on this roster going into next year, you can't take that risk because you can do more with that money. So to me, right. I think it's ultimately the right decision. Would it have been a disaster if they had given it to him? No. And it's also not a guarantee that he would have taken it. There's no guarantee that he wouldn't have. And there's also no guarantee that he won't re-sign here still. Like, he's just a free agent. He hasn't left yet. Although I think he probably should and will. But yeah, this is, I think, ultimately the right decision. It's not a no-brainer. Like I said, if they had done it, I can certainly understand why they took that shot, but they decided not to. And I think ultimately it was the right decision. Regardless of whatever contract Teoscar gets, you're not going to throw that in my face and be like, see, I told you, because he's not getting that contract with a qualifying offer attached to him. So There's a lot of variables here, and I have to trust at this point that the Mariners know more than I do, or more than you do, who's tweeting in all caps about how stupid they are. I have to assume that they know more about what this player's intentions were if they did give him the qualifying offer than you do, who has no information whatsoever. So
Right. Yeah.
ultimately, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, but this is what I would have done too. So I don't have a problem with it, and if you don't like it because the draft pick, I think you're kind of full of it. If you don't like it because you thought Teoscar was a good fit here, I hope I didn't see you complaining about strikeouts in the comments section all year. So, just some consistency is all I'm looking for. But ultimately, I think they made the right decision. But I do understand some aspects of the people who don't understand.
No, I totally get it, and I even partly understand the whole why should we trust that they do have a good feel for his market when they've openly said over the last couple of markets that they haven't had a good feel for it. But I think it's a little bit different when we're talking about one guy and talking about one guy that's been around you for the last few months and you've been talking directly with his camp about this. Because look, these conversations don't just start at the end of the season. These conversations happen over the course of the season as well. And so they've had a very good idea of what Teo's intentions are, and if there is any indication there that he might be willing to actually take the qualifying offer. And I think if they received or they understood that there was a chance that he would take it, then this was the best decision. Because at the end of the day, look, we need to live in reality. John Stanton is probably going to restrict Terry DePoto and Justin Hollander financially this offseason. That's just the reality of things. Whether that's a good or bad thing, it's a bad thing, is a completely separate conversation, but that's just what it is. And so because they have to live within the confines and work within the confines of what John Stanton has said, $20 million is a lot of money. That might take a significant chunk out of what they're able to spend this offseason. And the fact of the matter is, running it back with Teo, that doesn't fix the problem here. You can't just run it back with your 2023 roster. And at that number, that might be the best player you acquire this offseason. And that's just, again, just running it back. So look, I get the frustration. I get the frustration over the draft pick and all that, but to me, it's just not worth it. It really is. We're talking about essentially a glorified third round pick here. It's not worth the risk. And again, I don't think that the chances of him taking the qualifying offer were high, because the home road splits. If he's looking to just reestablish his market on a 1-year deal, he should go do that elsewhere. He's probably going to have a better chance of doing that and getting back to that 120, 130 WRC plus guy that he was before coming to Seattle elsewhere. Again, I'm not saying that the chances of that are relatively high either, but I think they're higher elsewhere than in Seattle, of course.
Higher odds if you're in Chicago or Boston or Toronto, one of the launching pads.
So I don't think that that he would have taken it, probably, in all likelihood. But to act like there was an absolute zero chance that it's a slam dunk that he would not take it, and that you basically just burnt a draft pick for no reason, is silly. I think that insinuation is really silly, because look, we've seen this over the past with guys coming off of down years that have had the qualifying offer attached to them, that have had to wait a long time, obviously in better markets. And again, guys like Teo are probably going to benefit from the fact that this is a terrible market for hitters. But we've seen in the past, guys have to wait a long time and see their earning potential in both dollars and even years decrease because they've had that qualifying offer attached to them. And some guys have had to wait until like spring training or even beyond that to sign with a team because they've had the qualifying offer attached to them. So I don't see I just can't foresee teams lining up out of the door given the year that he just came off of. And the fact that, depending on what bracket you fall in as a team, you might have to give up a second round pick or a third round pick or a second and a fifth round pick to sign him. Especially with how, cheap teams are and how risk averse a lot of teams are, I have a hard time envisioning that happening. And so that's all to say that I think that there was a chance that Teo would get to a point in his market where just, 1 year, $20 million makes the most sense for him. And while the situation probably isn't the most beneficial for him in terms of reestablishing his market. At a certain point, you just got to take the money, right? And just take a chance on yourself and bet on yourself. And so, again, I think it's probably like a 5% chance at most that he would have taken the qualifying offer, but it's the non-zero chance. And there's a lot of people out there acting like it was just flat out zero. I don't buy that personally. So I think at the end of the day, this was the best decision that the Mariners could have made. And the third round pick to me is like, it would be cool to have, especially for us. We like the draft and all that. And obviously the bonus pool money that comes with that as well, allows you to do some creative stuff with the rest of the draft. But overall, I don't think that's like a huge deal. I'm not losing sleep over a glorified third round pick. I'm just not. So yeah. We'll see if maybe they were negotiating an extension before the deadline yesterday. So maybe there is still some interest there in bringing him back. I doubt it. I think they want to go elsewhere. But who knows? Maybe they do really like Teo and they do want him to be a part of this thing. And I get it. And I get teams that will show interest in him that might think that he's better than what he was this past year. But there are some very concerning signs of decline in Teo's game right now. And it's pretty hard to ignore. But yeah. All right. So let's talk about the AL East, some potential trade targets there for the Mariners. We'll be going over those in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. And yeah, the Mariners might not be playing right now, but the Kraken and Seahawks are. So whether the action is on turf or on the ice, you can bet on it all with FanDuel. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKEDON and kick off the NFL season. Again, that's fanduel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So we just talked about the Teoscar Hernandez qualifying offer situation. Now we're going to turn our attention to the AL East and continue our trade preview, our division by division trade preview. We've done the AL West, done the AL Central. Now we're doing the AL East. We're going to start with the Toronto Blue Jays, Teo's former team. So anything on the Blue Jays that you are interested in from the Mariners perspective, Colby?
Yes and no. I mean, nothing that seems that realistic. There is a big deal that could be made where Seattle trades like Logan Gilbert and stuff, and the Blue Jays give up Bo Bichette and stuff. Like, obviously it wouldn't just be a straight 1-for-1, but that seems unrealistic. But they are going to have to pay Bo soon. They're going to have to pay Vladdy soon, and they're not going to have the ability to pay both of them what those guys are going to want. At least in theory, because they also have Gossman. I mean, they have George Springer, who's, kind of an interesting guy if his salary wasn't so high. So not a ton there. Like, I don't think you're getting anybody out of the Jays pen. You're probably not getting Swanson back. Adam Simber is kind of interesting.
Jimmy Garcia might be traded. There's been some rumblings about that. So maybe
I'd be interested. So Adam Simber, but he's probably getting non-tendered, so I don't think you have to go the trade route. Some guys in the bullpen that make some sense, but really in terms of like the big guns, the rotation and the lineup, not really. Like, the catchers don't make sense. Vlad and Bo are going to cost you, Gilbert, and that's just a huge deal. They don't have anything at third, and their outfield is, I think right now, Dalton Varsho, yuck, no thanks. So yeah, I don't see a ton here in terms of major league talent. Again, unless both teams want to go and pull off the most shocking trade of the offseason and flip a couple of their young all-star players. I just don't see anything here. aside from maybe a bullpen piece or two. And but I do like the idea of George Springer, like if you can get the money down a little bit,
Right.
uh, and get him obviously pretty cheap. But yeah, not a ton here.
Yeah. Maybe Jimmy Garcia, maybe Santiago Espinal, maybe Kevin Biggio, but there isn't a lot here.
Josh Rojas is better than those guys.
So the Orioles are in a very interesting position. They just won 100 plus games. They, won their division. They had a disappointing effort in the playoffs, and a big reason for that is the pitching, right? Their rotation needs to be a lot better than it is right now. And so, putting 2 and 2 together here, Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, those guys could make sense, but I don't know if there's necessarily a perfect fit in terms of a return here from Baltimore.
Yeah, because you don't want to trade those guys for prospects, and that's really where Baltimore's value is right now. You're not trading either of those guys for 1 year of Anthony Santander, who does fit Seattle a little bit, although he's a bit overrated, but still he would help. Cedric Mullins is coming off of kind of a mediocre year. He's a fun player. He's got 2 years left.
Yeah.
It's probably still not enough for Wu or Miller.
Yeah.
And make no mistake, Baltimore is going to prioritize pitching. It's their biggest weakness by far, and they're not going to go out on the market and get in the Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Aaron Nola. Like they're not going to go after the top guys, and they're probably not going to have much luck getting like Michael Wacha or somebody in that middle tier. So they're going to have to trade, and they're going to want to trade their prospects. And while they have some good prospects, certainly, and some guys who would make sense on paper, for Seattle, you're not trading Miller or Wu for prospects. You want somebody who can definitely help you this year. And, like Jordan Westberg, you're just so confident that guy's going to help you this year.
Yeah. Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad,
Connor Norby. I mean,
I like those guys.
guys.
I don't know if that makes sense for where the Mariners are currently at.
I wish you had another Bryce Miller in the minors right now.
And I think that's like fair valuation in general, just in a vacuum, like Miller for a couple of those guys, Miller for, Cowser and Norby, and, maybe someone like Ramon Urias or something like that. Like that makes sense on paper, but for the Mariners in general, like where they're at right now, I don't know. Because I think you need more dependability, especially when you're trading away from your greatest strength, right? When you are diminishing your greatest strength, which is your rotation, you got to do that for something that you can sink your teeth into. And while Colton Cowser is one of the best prospects in baseball right now, I don't know if he's going to be anything for me in 2024. He wasn't really anything for the Orioles in his cup of coffee in 2023. Right. So why do I think that's going to change in 2024? Why do I think that that's going to change for Jordan Westberg in 2024? So again, I like these guys. Like if there's a prospect for prospect swap where the Mariners get like Connor Norby or something that can happen, I'm totally for that. I'm a little bit hesitant in terms of trading Miller or Wu for any of those guys.
Right. If Hancock was a little bit better, maybe. Right. But he's just the value doesn't line up. So unless we're talking about like Santander and Kobe Mayo for like Bryce Miller,
right,
value's just really not going to be there. So and that's really what you're looking for here. There's not a ton that you're going to trade to Baltimore that is going to make sense for them if it's not one of your 2 young pitchers. So there might be some minor deals here or there, but I just don't see a ton. I just don't see that good of a match because again, I don't think Seattle is going to be interested in taking a prospect, headline deal for one of their young arms. Right. I think they'd rather lose club control and get a better player than just do a club control swap of 2 players, Miller and somebody who you hope will give you the same value that Miller did last year, and probably more. So I just don't see it.
So the Tampa Bay Rays, the Mariners already made a trade with them as of yesterday, but minor league trade. Blake Hunt.
Who'd they trade for?
Blake Hunt.
Oh, okay.
Blake Hunt.
Blake. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Blake. Yep.
Right.
Blake Hunt or Tatum Levens. So the Rays though have some other pieces that are pretty interesting as far as the Mariners are concerned.
Do they though?
If you're subscribed to the Patreon, you might know a little something about our feelings about the Rays and potential trades.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, look, it obviously starts with Randy Arozarena is someone that we've talked about a lot over the last few months. There's no indication that he's actually available, but it would make sense. He's starting to make money. The Rays are obviously very cheap. Mark Topkin is like the Ryan Divish of beat reporters in Tampa. He said that Harold Ramirez is pretty much like going to get traded this offseason along with a couple other guys. Seems like Tyler Glasnow is going to get traded. I don't think the Mariners would have any interest in that. Unless they're trading, Miller or Wu, maybe they would be interested in that after that. But yeah, it's really for me, it's Arozarena, it's Ramirez. We've talked about Brandon Lau a bit. There's some guys in the bullpen. If you're looking to beef up your bullpen, there's options here.
Got to be careful with who you acquire out of that bullpen, but
right.
Yeah, some other guy, Isaac Paredes would be a great addition, but doesn't really have the exit velos and the hard hit rates that the Mariners tend to value. So there's some question about how that power would play. There's some, minor league or not minor league guys, some like bench guys that could be of interest to Seattle. Taylor Walls, maybe Austin Shenton is a guy who we've talked about. And we know the Mariners tried to acquire Shenton for Teoscar Hernandez at the deadline. But yeah, you mentioned Harold Ramirez, Yandy Diaz, maybe, but probably not.
Yeah.
If you're looking for, like who's the Bryce Miller equivalent, you might want to look at Josh Lowe. He's an interesting guy. Luke Raley is certainly a guy who could fit here. Like there's a lot of guys, obviously, in this lineup and on this team that make a lot of sense for Seattle. And Seattle has some pieces that are certainly going to make sense for Tampa. So these two teams always perpetually good trade partners. That's the case again this winter. So. And these are two front offices that are very willing to get creative. They are willing to move money around. And so they're willing to, maybe it's Harry Ford and Jared Kelnick for Josh Lowe. And, I'd pick up Taj Bradley. I don't know. Like there are guys that are going to get talked about and thrown around that we're not even expecting. Tampa Bay is far and away the best trade fit for Seattle in this division. And
agreed.
Literally take anybody on their 26-man roster right now, and I could look at it and go like, I could see a way that would make sense for Seattle.
Right. Yeah, and obviously the Mariners have some pieces that the Rays would, in theory, be interested in. I think Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, those guys would be of interest to them for
Especially
sure.
If they're trading Glasnow.
Especially if they're trading Glasnow, and Shane McClanahan's going to miss all of 2024.
Yep.
I believe Jeffrey Springs is going to miss at least half of 2024, if not all of it. And Drew Rasmussen as well is supposed to miss at least half of 2024 as well. So they're really banged up in that rotation. So I would assume that they're going to have quite a bit of interest in guys like Miller or Wu.
Dark horse. This is a place to look for Logan Gilbert.
Yeah.
We talk about like, what would it take to get Logan Gilbert? Do any teams even have that type of ammo to come and get Logan Gilbert from you?
The Rays do.
There's only a couple.
Yeah.
The Rays are one of them. Yeah. Because they can offer you major league talent.
Yeah.
And prospects.
And quite a bit of it. Yeah.
Another
guy that
likely to happen, but Logan Gilbert, this is one of the three teams that I could actually see Gilbert getting traded to this winter.
Another guy I would keep an eye on that would go from Seattle to Tampa is prospect Ty Pete. The Rays really wanted Ty Pete in the draft last year, and the Mariners selected him one spot before the Rays. So if they do swing a bigger deal where like a Arozarena is involved or Harold Ramirez is involved or Josh Lowe, someone like that, maybe Ty Pete is involved in that deal as well. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, there's a lot of possibilities here with the Rays. So I definitely keep an eye on them. I don't think the Blake Hunt trade is going to be the only trade those two teams make this offseason, but we'll see.
Yep.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Before we get back into our trade targets here, I saw someone in the comments say they wanted to see the tattoo that I got for when we did their charity event. I guess some people didn't see it. So there you go. It's here. It's real. I got it. It's real. It's a thing that I did. Yep. I followed
people
through.
Wouldn't have these questions if
I did the video.
Made a vlog, but
yeah.
Whatever. Sometimes people promise things and they back out. So hopefully we're I think we're planning on doing another fundraiser sometime this off season. So I don't really have any illusions that we'll get $15,000 raised again, but yeah, You guys want to prove me wrong, but you won't because you're lazy. Aha.
Right, right. That didn't
Reverse
work last
psychology.
time.
No, it didn't.
Yeah,
But again, I think that was mostly timing. But yeah,
right.
so hopefully we'll announce something in the next couple weeks. I'm not sure what we have to do with legal and all that stuff, but
Right, right.
we
Yeah.
do definitely want to do another fundraiser. The last one was a lot of fun to track, and you guys really stepped up. So
And this time
yeah,
Colby's gonna get a tattoo on his face. Mm,
I am not agreeing to that.
he is. He will.
Nope.
Yep. All right. So the Boston Red Sox. This is not a particularly great trade fit for the Mariners. I don't see a lot here that the Mariners would be interested in.
Verdugo.
Yeah, even then,
I mean,
take him
like
or
if
leave
he's
him.
your third best bat, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah, I mean that's fine, but like at the end of the day, like take him or leave him. I don't really
yeah,
care.
I
Pitching wise, there isn't a whole lot. Like the bullpen, not really a ton there. Yeah, just
it's
not a
just
lot.
the Red Sox are a team that I bet the Red Sox are gonna be pretty heavy. Like a lot of people think they're a dark horse for Ohtani. I don't think so, but I bet that they're gonna be pretty heavy on Montgomery, on Snell, on Nola. I could
Right.
see them being, pretty interested in like a Reese Hoskins type. Like, so I think they're gonna spend money
Yeah.
this offseason, but what's on their roster currently, not good, not great. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens and who might become available. Like you're not getting Tristan Casas, or like maybe get Bobby Dahl back in like a throwaway deal, get a Seattle guy back home, but he's not really a Mariners type of guy either. But maybe for roster depth, I'll throw one name at you.
Okay.
Just because I know that it's going to make you a little upset here. For sale.
Oh, okay.
That the human man baby.
Right. Yeah.
He's got 1 year left on his deal. He was okay last year, but it's for $27 million. So
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I
It's a
can keep
lot.
that.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty much it. Like I'm just trying to get a name here for you.
Yeah.
Ryan
like
Brazier, is he still a thing out there?
yeah, he's still a thing. I don't. He only threw 21 innings this year, so I'm going to assume he got hurt.
Yeah,
Maybe not. I don't know.
There's just not a ton.
Actually, he threw 59. Oh, did he get traded? I think he got traded.
Don't remember that.
Yeah.
To be fair, I was so focused on what the Mariners didn't do at the deadline. I didn't really pay attention to what did happen.
Right. 2 teams. Yeah, he got traded to the Dodgers.
Ah, okay. So,
But I think he's a free agent now.
Okay, not even him then. Pretty much Verdugo.
Yeah. Maybe like Garrett Whitlock or Brennan Bernardino, former Mariner. He had a really good year.
I know,
relative to
like,
mid-leverage
no.
relievers, but yeah.
Sure. No, I don't see either of those guys. So I think it's pretty much Verdugo and maybe Bobby Dahl back.
Yeah, I don't see a match here. All right, lastly, the Yankees, who I also don't really see much of a match here. I know a lot of people are like Gleyber Torres. I don't know.
There's some Teoscar Hernandez to Gleyber Torres.
I also believe Ryan Divish said that there's like some current concerns about his work ethic. I think when he was on with Ben Ranieri. So
Sure.
I don't know if that necessarily aligns with the Mariners' philosophy either. Now, Jesse Winker was here.
I mean, was Winker a work ethic guy though?
Apparently,
or did he just fall off a cliff? Like,
apparently, it was a work ethic
But
thing that rubbed the clubhouse the wrong way.
Isn't it a lot easier to sell that on a 1 year deal?
Sure. I don't know if they were gonna, even dip their toe into that pool. But we'll see. That's kind of like the only guy though that I look at and I'm like, that makes some sense, at least in terms of, just pure baseball.
I like Anthony Rizzo's fit in T-Mobile Park. I like his fit in the clubhouse. He's kind of that established vet who's well respected in the game. Good vibes guy. So, but that contract is bad, and he was bad last year. Unfortunately, played with an undiagnosed concussion for most of the year.
Yeah, that's so brutal.
I mean, that's a different story that we could. How do the Yankees not catch that? Blah blah blah. But aside from, I just don't think that contract is going to lend itself to being a good trade possibility. If Seattle doesn't bring back Tom Murphy, Trevino, or Higashioka, could make some sense as a backup catcher. Oswald Peraza or Oswaldo Cabrera, maybe.
Maybe.
DJ LeMahieu.
I was going to bring him up.
Maybe,
it's not,
probably not. But
let me look up his contract just so I'm sure on that.
Yeah, it's not awful, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, he's making 15 a year, but he's 35. He's declined a bit. Just a 101 WRC plus this year. He can play second. He can, play a little bit of third, play some first. Like, so it makes sense from that perspective. But again, he's older and he's making a good chunk of money. I mean, if you're able to get them to eat some of that money, maybe I'm interested. It's just, I don't know. He's due $45 million over the next 3 years. So
yeah, it feels like a Gino for LeMahieu swap, and I'd probably just rather bank on Gino.
I'd rather just
rebounding.
have Gino. Yeah.
Some guys in the bullpen, Tommy Kahnle, Clay Holmes, if the Yankees really want to
Michael
get some
King.
prospects. Yeah, like there's some dudes, but for the most part, there's not a ton here. It's the backup catcher. Maybe you get one of the catchers. Rizzo is a guy I really like. I like the fit really well. I don't like the contract, and so it's probably a no-go there. And then maybe if you want to take a shot on Oswaldo Cabrera, who's flashed at the big leagues level but was terrible this year. So some role players, but nothing I don't see. It's just not a very good division in terms of how they line up with Seattle. Baltimore and Tampa really carry the day here.
Yeah, it's like Tampa's here, Baltimore's here, and then everyone else is like somewhere down here. So
yeah, I'd say Toronto is really only interesting if you're talking like trading Logan Gilbert or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And then Boston and New York. I just don't even know what they're going to do this offseason. I don't know what their plans are, but those are not very good rosters. So there's definitely some minor pieces you could pick out of that, but nothing that's going to, tip the scales drastically.
Yeah. I'm not interested in a whole lot from those teams. So yeah, that's pretty much the story here with the AL East. It's the Mariners are going to make a trade with one of these teams. It's probably the Rays. Pretty good chance it's going to be the Rays. I mean, they've already made a trade with the Rays, but I think
sure,
if they're going to make another trade with this division the rest of the way, it's probably with the Rays. Maybe the Orioles, but again, that doesn't make a ton of sense for where the Mariners are at, unless they're able to get a pretty solid deal on someone like Cedric Mullins, which I just can't envision. So we'll see. All right, before we get out of here, Colby, do you have a question of the day for the folks down in the comments?
I mean, not really a serious one, but you guys seem to like the were they on a break?
Yeah.
And if they were on a break, they were broken up, which means Ross didn't cheat. He's still a scumbag, but for different reasons. Anyways.
Sure.
So I guess I'll just follow up with this. Ty mentioned that Mariners Twitter needs like a celebrity boxing night or something. So let me just ask you guys this. Me versus Ty in the ring. Who you taking?
Right.
We'll go 3 rounds?
Yeah.
3-round fight. Who you
Make
taking?
it 5. Make it 5.
Sure. Make it 12. Bring it on.
Yeah, make it 12. Make it 20.
I don't want to bounce around for
That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLC. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.